a king who can rip armies apart with his bare hands. On his knees in the mud, voice breaking, begging the one person who was never supposed to say no, "Please, my love, don't do this." And she, tiny, soft-spoken, the weak little Omega everyone thought would forgive anything, looks him dead in the eyes, tears streaming, and says the words that shatter an entire kingdom. "I reject you. Tell me, what would make you walk away from the one person your soul is literally bound to? Could you stand in front of thousands and break the most powerful man alive, knowing it might cost you everything? And when he crawls after you, howling your name like the world is ending, would you look back? One click, and you'll feel every heartbeat of the moment the Alpha King begged. And the Omega Queen did it anyway, ready to cry, scream, and cheer for a woman who chose herself, when the entire world told her she wasn't allowed to. Hit play. The moon is rising, and she's not kneeling tonight. Chapter 1. The Shattered Vow. The moon hung low over the ancient forests of casting a silver glow on the sprawling palace grounds, where the werewolf pack gathered for the annual moon festival. Torches flickered along the stone pathways, illuminating faces etched with anticipation and joy. Laughter echoed through the air, mingling with the distant howls of wolves patrolling the borders. But in the heart of it all, Elara Moon stood on the raised dais in the town square, her small frame dwarfed by the towering figure of her mate, King Lucius Black. Elara was the epitome of an Omega petite, with soft curves that spoke of quiet nurturing rather than fierce dominance. Her long raven hair cascaded down her back like a midnight river, and her emerald eyes held a gentleness that had once captivated the entire kingdom. She wore a flowing gown of deep crimson, the color of the royal pack, embroidered with silver threads that shimmered under the moonlight. Beside her, their 4-year-old daughter, Lila, clutched her hand, her tiny wolf ears twitching curiously at the crowd. Lucius, the Alpha King, was a vision of raw power, broad-shouldered and towering at over 6 feet. His chiseled jaw and piercing golden eyes commanded respect from every wolf in the realm. His dark hair was tousled, as if the wind itself bowed to him, and his black tunic clung to his muscled form, accentuating the tattoos of ancient runes that marked him as the unchallenged leader. He smiled down at Elara, his hand possessively on her lower back, fingers tracing lazy circles that sent unwelcome shivers through her. To the pack, they were the perfect pair-fated mates, bound by the moon goddess herself. But Elara knew the truth. It had festered in her soul for years, a poison that no amount of royal luxury could cure. The festival drums began to beat, signaling the start of the mating vow renewal ceremony. Elders from allied kingdoms stood in a semicircle, their wise eyes watching as Lucius turned to face her. The crowd hushed, thousands of werewolves from the pack and beyond holding their breath. This was tradition, the Alpha and his queen reaffirming their bond under the full moon, strengthening the pack's unity. "My queen," Lucius murmured, his voice a deep rumble that vibrated through her bones. He leaned in, his breath hot against her ear. "Tonight, we show them our unbreakable love." His hand slid lower, cupping her hip in a way that was meant to be intimate but felt like a chain. Elara's heart pounded, not with desire, but with the steel resolve she'd forged in secret. She glanced at Lila, who giggled innocently, unaware of the storm brewing. The little girl's eyes, a mirror of her father's gold, sparkled with excitement. Elara swallowed the lump in her throat. This was for her. For them both? Before we continue, please kindly tell us where you are watching from. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We have a wonderful story that will make your day. As the High Elder stepped forward, chanting the ancient words, Lucius took Elara's hands in his. His touch was warm, calloused from battles won, but it burned her skin like betrayal. "Do you, King Lucius Black, reaffirm your eternal bond to your fated mate, Elara Moon, Queen of Eldoria?" "I do," Lucius said, his voice booming across the square. He pulled her closer, his lips brushing her forehead in a kiss that once would have melted her. Now, it only fueled her rage. The elder turned to her, And do you, Queen Elara Moon, reaffirm your eternal bond to your fated mate, King Lucius Black, Alpha of El. The world seemed to freeze. Whispers rippled through the crowd as Elara hesitated. Lucius's grip tightened, a warning in his eyes. Elara, he whispered urgently, say it. But she pulled her hands free, stepping back. Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice, though soft, carried like a thunderclap. No. Gasps erupted from the pack. Lucius's face paled, his golden eyes widening in shock. What? Elara lifted her chin, her Omega instincts screaming at her to submit, to kneel before her Alpha, but she fought it, drawing on the pain that had scarred her heart. I, Elara Moon, reject you, King Lucius Black, as my mate and my king. The words hung in the air like a death knell. The bond between them snapped a visceral tear that made Lucius stagger, clutching his chest as if stabbed. Howls of outrage and confusion filled the square. Elders murmured in disbelief. Allied kings exchanged stunned glances, and pack members shouted accusations. How dare she? A warrior bellowed from the front, an Omega rejecting the Alpha. She's mad. Traitor, another cried, but not all voices were against her. Some women in the crowd, Omegas like her, wiped tears from their eyes, nodding silently. Lucius fell to his knees in the mud, the mighty king reduced to a broken man. Please, my love, don't do this, he begged, his voice raw and desperate. Rain began to fall, as if the skies wept for him. He reached for her hem, his fingers trembling. Elara, I can explain. Whatever pain I've caused, I'll fix it. You're my fated mate. We belong together. Ilara's tears mixed with the rain, her heart shattering even as it mended. She remembered the night she discovered his betrayal walking in on him, with her best friend, Selena, in their own bed. The scent of their passion, the whispered promises, then the hidden pup, a boy now 5 years old, tucked away in a distant village because Lucius feared the scandal. He'd sworn it was a mistake, a moment of weakness during a full moon heat. But mistakes didn't last months, didn't produce heirs he hid from his queen. She'd forgiven him once, twice, swallowing the agony because biology bound her the pull of the mate bond, the need for his touch that set her body aflame even as her soul withered. Are anticipated, but no more. Not with Lila watching, learning that love meant enduring betrayal. Mama Lila tugged at her dress, her small voice cutting through the chaos. Elara scooped her up, holding her close. We're going home, little one, a new home. Lucius lunged forward on his knees, grabbing her ankle. Elara, please. I'll give up the throne, the kingdom, anything. Don't leave me. I need you. The crowd surged, some trying to block her path, others partying in awe. An elder stepped forward, his voice stern. Queen Elara, this rejection will fracture the pack. Think of the consequences. I've thought of nothing else for years, she replied, her voice steady now. She met Lucius's gaze one last time, seeing the man she'd once loved, the one who'd claimed her under the stars, his body moving over hers in a frenzy of passion that had left her breathless and marked forever. Their first night as mates had been ecstasy, his strong hands pinning her down, his lips trailing fire across her skin, his growls of possession as he thrust deep, claiming her fully. Even now, the memory stirred a forbidden heat low in her belly, the Omega in her whining for his dominance, but she pushed it down. You broke us, Lucius, not me. With that, she turned and walked away, Lila, in her arms. The rain poured harder, masking her sobs. Behind her, Lucius howled a primal, heartbroken sound that echoed through the kingdom. The town square erupted into pandemonium. Fights broke out between loyalists and those inspired by her defiance. Whispers of rebellion spread like wildfire. Elara didn't look back. She slipped through the palace gates, her steps quickening as she headed for the hidden carriage she'd prepared. The forest loomed ahead, dark and welcoming. Freedom tasted bittersweet on her tongue, but as she vanished into the night, a shadow detached from the trees, a rogue wolf. He watched her go, a sinister smile curling his lips. The rejection had opened doors Lucius Neve. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Shadows. The carriage lurched over roots and stones, rain hammering the roof like claws trying to rip her back. Elara pressed Leela's small sleeping body against her chest, the child's warm breath the only thing keeping her from shattering completely. Every mile away from the palace felt like peeling off her own skin. The mate bond, once a golden thread of comfort, now thrashed inside her like a dying animal, ripping, burning, demanding she turn around and crawl back to him. She didn't. By the time the horses stopped at the forgotten cottage deep in the Whispering Vale, dawn was bleeding pale pink across the sky. The safe house was small, moss-covered, hidden by ancient oaks that leaned together like gossiping elders. Elara carried Leela inside, laid her on the narrow bed, and finally let herself collapse. The pain hit then. It wasn't metaphorical. The severed bond was physical agony, like someone had reached into her chest and yanked out half her organs. She curled on the floorboards, muffling screams into her own forearms so she wouldn't wake her daughter. Her body shook with withdrawal, heat without release, craving without touch. The Omega in her howling for an Alpha who no longer had the right to answer. Hours bled into afternoon. She forced herself upright, lit the hearth, unpacked the single bag she dared to prepare. Bread, cheese, a few of Lila's dresses, a dagger, a pouch of silver coins, and one thing she couldn't look at yet, Lucius's old shirt, the one that still smelled like pine smoke and him. She'd grabbed it without thinking, like a fool. Night fell again. Too fast. Lila woke hungry and confused. Where's Papa? Elara's throat closed. Papa's far away tonight, little moon. Will he come tuck me in? The question was a knife. Elara swallowed blood where she'd bitten her tongue. Not tonight. She fed Lila, sang her the lullaby Lucius used to growl in that low, rumbling voice that made both their daughters instantly sleepy. When Lila finally drifted off again, Elara stood on the tiny porch and let the cold air slap her awake. That was when the memories came, uninvited, vicious. 3 years ago, the night everything cracked open. Lucius had come back from the border wars smelling of blood and victory. He'd found her in their chambers, waiting like always, soft and eager and stupidly in love. He hadn't spoken, just backed her against the wall, teeth already on her throat, hands ripping silk like it offended him. Missed you, he'd snarled against her skin, voice rough with weeks of restraint. Missed this sweet little body that was made for me. She'd whimpered, legs wrapping around his waist the second he lifted her. He'd taken her right there against the stone wall. Hard, fast, punishing. Like he could brand 3 months of absence out of his system in one brutal claiming. His hand fisted in her hair, arching her neck so he could sink his teeth into the mating mark again and again. Growling mine, mine, mine with every thrust. She'd come twice before he even carried her to the bed. Later, slower, he'd flipped her onto her stomach, dragged her hips up, and taken her from behind like she was his to ruin. His palm cracked against her ass, once, twice, until she sobbed into the furs, begging for more, for harder, for anything he wanted to give. He'd obliged. Fingers digging bruises into her hips, cock driving so deep she saw stars. His growls turning feral when she clenched around him and screamed his name. He'd nodded her that night, thick and pulsing inside her, locking them together while he whispered filthy praise against her ear. How perfect she felt, how no one else would ever have her, how she was his good girl, his queen, his everything. She'd believed him. Even when the scent of another female started clinging to his skin weeks later, even when Selena's belly began to round and Lucius stopped coming to their bed. Elara pressed her thighs together now, on a dark porch miles away from that palace, and hated herself for the slick heat pooling at the memory. Her body didn't care that he'd betrayed her. Her body only remembered the way he used to wreck her so perfectly, she forgot her own name. A twig snapped in the trees. She went still, every sense flaring. The forest had gone quiet. No night birds, no wind. Just the low, deliberate crunch of a footstep. Elara slipped back inside, locked the door, grabbed the dagger. Her heart hammered so hard she tasted iron. Another sound, closer. A soft inhale, like someone scenting the air. She pressed her back to the wall beside the window. Blade ready, a shadow passed across the moonlit porch. Then, a knock. 3 measured taps, not aggressive. Not yet. A male voice, low and calm, drifted through the wood. Queen Elara. My name is Rowan Vale. I'm a friend of someone you once helped, long ago. I swear on the goddess I mean you no harm. She didn't move, didn't breathe, he continued, voice velvet and dangerous. Word travels fast when an Omega makes an Alpha King kneel in the mud. Some of us have been waiting a very long time for that to happen. Another pause. Open the door, little queen. Or I will, and I promise I knock only once. The dagger trembled in her hand. Inside her chest, the torn bond pulsed like an open wound, and for one terrifying second she wished, God help her. She wished it was Lucius on the other side. It wasn't. Chapter 3. The King's Despair. Elara's fingers whitened around the dagger's hilt. Rowan Vale. The name scraped across old memories like claws on bark. 10 years ago, when she was still a healer's apprentice, she'd pulled a silver arrow from a rogue wolf's lung in the middle of a thunderstorm. He'd been half dead, bleeding on her table, snarling that he'd rather die than accept an Omega's help. She'd saved him anyway. He'd never thanked her, just stared with those strange silver-green eyes and vanished before sunrise. She eased the door open an inch, chain still latched, blade hidden behind her thigh. Rowan stood on the porch like moonlight carved into a man. Tall, lean, dressed in black leathers worn soft from travel. Dark auburn hair tied back, a scar slicing through one brow. His scent hit her first, wild mint and storm rain, nothing like Lucius's pine and smoke dominance. It didn't pull at her the way an alpha should. That alone made her stomach twist with wary relief. You grew up, he said, voice low, amused. Still smell like moonflowers and stubbornness. What do you want? She kept her voice steady, though her legs shook from the bond's lingering ache. To offer you sanctuary, real sanctuary, not this crumbling cottage. His gaze flicked past her to Lila's sleeping form. Something unreadable softened in his eyes. The kingdom is tearing itself apart tonight. Lucius is not well. Elara's heart lurched, traitor that it was. She slammed the door in his face and latched it. Through the wood she heard him sigh. I'll wait until sunrise, then I leave. With or without you. She didn't sleep. Across the kingdom, in the palace of black marble and wolf banners, Lucius Black was breaking his world one fist at a time. He'd torn the throne room apart first. Claw marks gouged into ancient oak. The massive table split in half, goblets of wine bleeding across the floor like open wounds. Now he stood on the balcony overlooking the city. Shirt soaked with rain and blood from where he'd punched the stone balustrade until his knuckles split. Below, the capital burned with torches and shouting. Fights had broken out in every tavern. Loyalists screamed that the Omega Queen had spat on destiny itself. Others, mostly Omegas and younger Betas, marched with quiet fury, chanting her name like a war cry. Lucius's chest was a raw, gaping hole. The severed bond felt like silver poisoning, eating him from the inside. Every breath tasted like ash. He could still see her walking away. Crimson gowns soaked their daughter in her arms, never once looking back. He dropped to his knees on the wet stone, claws scraping as he clutched his hair. A memory clawed its way up. 2 months after Lila was born, Elara had been exhausted, body soft and lush from nursing, skin glowing with new mother radiance. He'd come to their chambers late, reeking of council wine, and found her in the copper bathtub, steam curling around her bare shoulders. He'd stripped without a word and climbed in behind her, pulling her back against his chest. She'd melted instantly, always did, her omega scent blooming sweet and needy the moment he touched her. He'd cupped her heavy breasts, thumbs circling nipples, still sensitive from feeding their pup, and felt her shudder. Lucius, she'd breathed, already arching. He'd slid one hand down her belly, between her thighs, finding her slick and ready because she was always ready for him, even exhausted, even hurting. 2 fingers inside her, slow, then 3, stretching her while his teeth grazed her mating mark. She'd moaned so prettily, rocking against his palm, begging in that soft, broken way that destroyed him. He'd turned her, lifted her onto the tub's wide rim, and knelt in the water like a supplicant. Spread her thighs and licked her slow and thorough, savoring every cry, every tremble, until she came on his tongue with her hands fisted in his hair. Then he'd stood, gripped her hips, and taken her right there, deep. Deliberate strokes while water sloshed over the edges, her legs locked around his waist, his name a prayer on her lips. He'd nodded her in the bathtub, locked together while she clung to him, whispering that she loved him, that she'd always love him, that he was her entire world. He'd believed her. Now the memory tasted like rot. Behind him, the doors opened. Selena stepped into the ruined room, belly softly rounded again, another secret, another mistake. Her scent curled through the air like poison ivy. "My king," she murmured, voice silk and sympathy. "The elders are calling for you. They want you to name a new queen before moonset tomorrow. The pack is fracturing." Lucius didn't turn. His voice came out shredded. "Get out." She moved closer, bold as ever. "Lucius, you need an heir the kingdom acknowledges. You need—" He spun, eyes blazing, alpha red, and roared. The force of it slammed her back 3 steps, wine glasses shattering on the floor. I said, "Get out." Selena's face crumpled, part fear, part calculation. Then she fled. Lucius sank against the balcony rail, rain mixing with the tears he refused to acknowledge. He pressed a trembling hand to his chest, where the bond used to live. "Elara," he whispered to the storm, "come back. I'll burn the world to ashes if that's what it takes. Just come back." Far away, in the cottage, Elara woke before dawn to find Rowanvale sitting on the porch steps, sharpening a blade, patient as winter itself. Inside, Lila stirred and called out in her sleep. Elara's eyes filled. She looked at the rogue wolf waiting in the gray light, then at the road that stretched north deeper into exile, farther from everything she'd ever known. She made her choice. Rowan stood when she opened the door, bag slung over her shoulder, Lila sleepy in her arms. "North?" he asked simply. "North," she confirmed. He nodded once, turned, and started walking. She followed, every step a fresh cut across her heart. Behind them, in the capital, the great bells began to toll, not for mourning but for emergency assembly. Lucius had just done the unthinkable. He had confessed everything. Every affair won. He stood before the entire kingdom, bloodied and soaked, and admitted his betrayal on the palace steps for all to hear. "I was unworthy," he roared, voice cracking. "I broke the one vow that mattered. I do not ask forgiveness. I ask only for the chance to earn it. Elara Moon is my queen, always, and I will drag myself through fire to prove it." The crowd went deathly silent. Then, somewhere in the back, a single Omega woman began to clap. Another joined, then 10, then hundreds. And in the distance, riding hard through the mud, came a rider bearing news that made Lucius's blood run cold. Their hidden son, the boy with Selena, had just shifted for the first time, at 5 years old, and the form he took was something the kingdom had not seen in 1,000 years. Chapter 4: Forbidden Longings. The boy's first shift rippled across the kingdom like a war drum. By the time Elara, Rowan, and a sleepy Lila reached the northern village of Silverhollow, every tavern and hearth crackled with the same impossible story. Lucius Black's bastard son, 5 winters old, had turned into a white direwolf the size of a pony under the new moon. Ancient, mythic, a harbinger, the elders whispered of either salvation or ruin. Elara heard it from the baker's wife while trading a silver comb for bread. She heard it again from the blacksmith's daughter, eyes shining with awe, who slipped Leela a honey cake and asked in a hushed voice, "Is it true you made the king cry in the mud?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. The words stuck behind her teeth like broken glass. Silverhollow sat in a narrow valley cupped by frost-tipped mountains. Smoke curled from chimneys, wolves and humans living side by side without the rigid hierarchy of the capital. Here, Omegas walked with their heads high. No one bowed when Elara passed. Some nodded, some smiled like they knew her before she knew herself. Rowan left her at a small, sturdy house on the edge of the village, 2 rooms, a loft for Lila, a garden already heavy with winter kale. "Rent's paid for a year," he said, tossing her the iron key. "No one will bother you here unless you want them to." She caught the key mid-air. "Why are you doing this?" He studied her for a long moment, silver-green eyes unreadable. "Because someone once gave me a second chance when I deserved a grave. Debts matter." Then he was gone, melting into the pines like he'd never been there at all. That night, the first gift arrived. A wooden box left on the doorstep, wrapped in black silk. Inside, a tiny, perfect carving of a wolf pup, Leela's favorite animal, and a single white moonflower that shouldn't bloom for months yet. No note, just a scent that punched the air from her lungs. Lucius! She should have thrown it into the fire. Instead, she stood on the porch clutching the flower until the petals bruised, until her hands shook with the effort of not crushing it. Every day after, something else came. A child's cloak of midnight blue, lined with silver fox fur exactly Lila's size. A leather-bound book of northern lullabies Elara used to hum when she was pregnant. A jar of the honeyed figs she craved when carrying Leela, the kind that only grew in the palace orchards. Never a letter, never a demand. Just proof that he was watching, listening, remembering every small thing she'd ever loved. And every night, when the ache of the broken bond clawed deepest, she found herself on the porch, breathing in the ghost of pine smoke that clung to each gift, tears burning tracks down her cheeks, because she missed him so violently, it felt like dying. The village Omegas found her anyway. They came in 2s and 3s at first, bringing bread, asking for nothing, then more. Soon her tiny hearth was crowded with women whose eyes held the same quiet bruises. She used to hide behind smiles. A baker named Mara told her how her alpha had taken a chosen mate when she failed to conceive quickly enough. A healer named Bryn confessed she'd miscarried 3 times because her mate refused to ease his claiming during her heats. They spoke in low voices, passing tea like contraband, and every story ended the same. "We saw you walk away. We saw you choose yourself. How do we do that?" Elara had no answers, only trembling hands and the truth. But she listened, and they kept coming. One afternoon, snow began to fall in thick, silent flakes. Lila played in the garden, shrieking with delight as she tried to catch them on her tongue. Elara watched from the window, arms wrapped around herself, when the biggest gift yet arrived. Not on the doorstep this time. A palace courier, half-frozen, eyes wide with fear, rode straight to her gate on a lathered horse. He dismounted, knelt in the snow, and offered a sealed letter with both hands. She recognized the wax seal instantly, the royal crest, but cracked deliberately down the middle. Her fingers went numb before she even broke it. Inside, a single page in Lucius's handwriting, bold, impatient strokes, now shaky. "I will not ask you to forgive me. I will not ask you to return. I have dismissed the council that demanded I replace you. I have acknowledged the boy publicly, He bears my name now, and my protection. I have stripped Selena of rank and lands. None of it matters. None of it changes what I stole from you. I send these things because I remember the girl who used to dance barefoot in the moonlight just to make me laugh. I remember the woman who sang to our daughter before she was even born. I remember every moment I was lucky enough to be yours, and every moment I threw away. If you burn this letter, I'll understand. If you burn every gift, if you tell me to stop breathing so you never have to feel me in the world again, I will try to obey. I have only one thing left to give you that is truly mine. The truth. I was wrong. I am lost without you. I will wait until the last star burns out, if that is what it takes. Yours, always and only. Even when I no longer deserve to sign it that way. Lucius. Snowflakes melted on the parchment, blurring the ink where her tears fell. Leela ran inside, cheeks red, eyes bright. Mama, look. The snow smells like Papa. Elara's knees buckled. She sank to the floor. Letter clutched to her chest, and for the first time since she walked away, a sound escaped her that was half sob, half laugh, all ache. Outside, dusk deepened. The village lights flickered on one by one, and on the ridge above Silver Hollow, half hidden by pines, a lone black wolf stood silhouetted against the rising moon. Golden eyes fixed on the warm glow of her window. He didn't move closer. He didn't howl. He simply watched, snow collecting on his fur, and waited exactly as he'd promised. Chapter 5. The Black Wolf stayed on the ridge for 7 nights. He never crossed the invisible boundary into Silver Hollow. He never shifted back to man. He simply stood sentinel, a dark statue against the snow, golden eyes catching every flicker of light from her window. The village saw him, the children whispered, the elders pretended not to notice. Elara felt him like a second heartbeat under her ribs. On the 8th night, the sky cracked open with northern lights, ribbons of violet and emerald twisting above the valley. Lila pressed her nose to the glass and gasped, "Mama, the sky's dancing." Elara looked up from the hearth, and her gaze locked with his across the distance. Even through the storm of color and miles of cold air, she felt the weight of it. I'm still here. I'm still yours. I will not leave you again. Something inside her chest tore wider and began, slowly, terrifyingly, to knit itself back together. She turned away first. The next morning Rowan returned. He strode into her yard at dawn, snow crunching under his boots, carrying a letter sealed in plain wax, no royal crest, just a single claw mark pressed deep. He won't come closer unless you allow it. And to tell you he will leave the moment you say the word. Elara took the letter with fingers that refused to stop trembling. She waited until Rowan and Leela were in the garden, Leela laughing as Rowan taught her to track rabbit prints, before she broke the seal. Elara, I have no right to ask for even a moment of your time, but the bond is killing me slowly, and I think it is killing you too. Not because it wants us together, because it remembers what I destroyed. If you can bear it, meet me at the old watchtower ruin at moonrise. One conversation. No guards. If you come and tell me to disappear forever, I will obey. If you do not come, I will leave at dawn and never return to this valley. I remain, against all reason and justice. Lucius. She burned the letter in the hearth and watched the flames eat his words. Then she stood there until the ashes were cold. Moonrise found her climbing the narrow, icy path to the watchtower. She wore plain wool and fur, no crimson gown, no crown, just the small Omega Queen who had once loved a king too much. The ruin stood on a cliff above the tree line. Half its stones tumbled into the gorge centuries ago. Wind howled through the broken arches. He was already there, human again. Cloaked in black, hood thrown back, snowflakes melting in his dark hair. He looked thinner, eyes shadowed. The arrogant set of his shoulders had been replaced by something raw and uncertain. He dropped to one knee the instant he saw her, not the dramatic kneel of the festival, but something quieter, more devastating. Head bowed, palms open on his thigh. I came to listen, he said, voice rough from disuse, only to listen. Elara stopped 10 paces away. The bond flared between them like a live wire, pain and longing and fury all braided together. You don't get to kneel now, she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. You knelt when it was too late. I don't want your repentance on display. I want it to have existed before I had to leave. Lucius flinched as if she'd struck him. It existed. I was too much of a coward to act on it. Silence stretched, sharp as broken glass. She took one step closer. Do you know what the worst part is? Her words trembled with old grief. I still love you. That's what you stole from me, the ability to stop. I hate that I stood in that square, ready to burn the world down, and still prayed you would give me a reason to stay. His head snapped up. Eyes wet. Another step. I watched you on that ridge every night, she whispered. I felt you holding the bond like it was the only thing keeping you alive. And part of me wanted to run to you. Part of me still wants to punish you forever. Both are true. Both are tearing me apart. Lucius rose slowly, carefully, as though she were a wild thing that might bolt. Tell me how to live with what I've done. Tell me how to give you peace. I will do anything. There is no peace yet. Her voice broke completely. There's only the truth. And the truth is, I don't know how to trust you again. I don't know if I ever will. He closed the distance in 2 strides, but stopped just short of touching her hands clenched at his sides. Shaking with the effort of restraint. I will earn it, he said fiercely. Not with gifts, not with pretty words. With time, with distance if you need it. With every day that I do not take what is no longer mine to take. Snow swirled around them. The northern lights painted them in shifting color. Elara looked up at him, really looked, and saw the man beneath the crown for the first time in years. Stripped, raw, terrified. Hers maybe once, maybe again, maybe never. I'm not ready, she said, the words scraping her throat. I may never be ready. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel you dying out there on that ridge. So here is my line in the snow, Lucius. She drew a breath that tasted like ice and forgiveness and fear. You may stay in the valley. You may watch Leela from a distance if she wishes it one day. But you do not come to my door. You do not send gifts that make me cry into my pillow. You do not ask for more than I can give. You live with the weight of what you broke. And if the day comes that I choose to step across this line myself, you will be there, not before. His eyes searched hers, and if that day never comes, she let the silence answer first. Then, softly, then we both learn how to carry the scar. For a long moment, neither moved. The wind screamed through the ruins. The lights above them flared brighter, as if the goddess herself leaned in to listen. Lucius dropped to one knee again, not in submission this time, but in acceptance. He pressed his fist over his heart. I swear it, he said, on my blood, on my crown, on whatever is left of my soul. I will wait on the correct side of your line until the mountains crumble. Elara felt the vow settle between them like a new bond, fragile, painful, but real. She turned to leave. At the edge of the broken archway, she paused, not looking back. The moonflowers, she said quietly. They're my favorite. You always remembered. Then she walked down the path alone, boots crunching through fresh snow, heart somehow both heavier and lighter than when she'd climbed up. Behind her, Lucius stayed on his knee long after she vanished, face tilted to the sky, letting the ice burn his skin because it was the only pain he was still allowed to feel. Far below, in the warm glow of the village, a little girl looked out her window and saw 2 sets of footprints in the snow, one coming, one going, and never meeting. Chapter 6. Rescue and Reckoning. The footprints never met, but the snow remembered both. Winter deepened. Lucius kept his vow with brutal precision. He took a small cabin on the far side of the valley, half a day's walk from Silver Hollow. He hunted alone. He trained with Rowan and the northern guards at dawn. He watched Leela from the tree line when she played in the meadow, never close enough for her to scent him unless she looked for him first. And every evening when the village lamps flickered on, he stood at the edge of the light and then turned away. Elara felt the distance like a bruise that refused to heal, yet refused to worsen. She began to breathe again. The Omegas kept coming to her hearth. She taught them small things: how to speak without lowering their eyes, how to stand when an alpha's power pressed against their instincts, how to say no and mean it. Word spread. More arrived, some traveling for weeks. Silverhollow became a quiet sanctuary, a place where the hierarchy cracked just enough for light to get in. And then, on the first night of the wolf moon, the longest, coldest night of the year, everything shattered. Lila vanished. Elara discovered it at moonrise. She tucked the child in, kissed her forehead, and went to bank the fire. When she returned, the bed was empty. The window was cracked open. A single white feather, not from any bird native to the north, lay on the pillow. Panic hit so hard she couldn't scream. She tore through the village, barefoot in the snow, voice raw. Rowan found her first. One look at her face, and he was already shifting, nose to the ground. Within minutes, the alarm horns sounded. Torches flared. Wolves poured from houses. Lucius arrived before the echo of the horns died. He came as wolf black as midnight, eyes blazing gold, crashing through the trees at a dead run. He shifted mid-stride, naked and steaming in the freezing air, and dropped to his knees in front of her without a word. Elara couldn't speak. She simply thrust the white feather at him. His face went feral. "I know this scent," he snarled. "Selena's personal guard. They've taken her south to the old silver mines." Rowan was already barking orders, assembling trackers. But Lucius looked only at Elara. "I will bring her back," he said, voice low and lethal. "Even if I have to tear the mountain apart, stone by stone." She met his eyes, no queen, no Omega, just a mother whose world had narrowed to one terrified heartbeat. "Then we go together." There was no time for argument. She shifted without thinking, her wolf, smaller, silver-gray, faster than anyone expected. Lucius's massive black form fell in beside her without hesitation. Rowan took the lead on four paws, guiding them through the blizzard that had rolled in with terrifying speed. They ran for hours. The bond, broken, jagged, raw, became something else in those desperate miles, a tether. She felt him pouring strength into her through the frayed threads. Steady, relentless. He felt her fear and matched it with icy focus. No words, just the rhythm of paws on snow, breath pluming white, two predators with one purpose. They found the mines at dawn, abandoned shafts collapsing into the mountainside, half buried in ice. Lucius scented the air and went rigid. "She's alive," he said. "Deep. They've warded the entrance against wolves." Elara's heart stuttered. Silver wards, deadly to their kind. Lucius didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, pressed his palm to the invisible barrier, and pushed. The wards flared white-hot. His skin blistered instantly, the smell of burning flesh sharp in the frozen air. He snarled, but did not stop. "Lucius, no. I'm getting our daughter," he growled through clenched teeth. "Stand back." Rowan tried to pull him away. Lucius shook him off like a flea and walked straight through the ward. The scream that tore from his throat was inhuman. He collapsed on the other side, smoking, half-conscious, but the ward shattered behind him like broken glass. Elara shifted to human and ran to him. His chest was a ruin of burns, silver poisoning already blackening the veins around the wounds, but his eyes were open, fierce. "Go," he rasped. "I'll hold the entrance." She kissed him hard, quick, tasting blood and snow and terror, then shifted again and bolted into the darkness with Rowan on her heels. They found Lila in the deepest chamber, curled in a cage of silver bars, cheeks streaked with tears but unharmed. Two guards lay dead at Rowan's jaws before they could shift. Elara tore the cage apart with her bare hands, silver searing her palms, and pulled her daughter against her heart. Lila clung to her, sobbing. "Mama, the bad wolves said Papa wasn't coming. They lied." Elara carried her out at a run. Lucius was still on his knees when they emerged, blood freezing on his skin, but alive. The moment he saw Lila, something in him broke wide open. He reached for her with shaking arms. Lila didn't hesitate. She launched herself from Elara's arms into his, burying her face in his neck. "Papa," she whispered, and the words sounded like forgiveness neither of them had earned yet. Lucius held her so tightly Elara thought he might never let go. His eyes over Lila's small shoulder met Elara's. They were wet, wild, ancient. "I told you," he said, voice cracking. "I will always come for you both." Behind them, Rowan shifted and scanned the trees. "We're not clear yet. Selena planned this. There are more coming." Elara looked at the man bleeding in the snow, holding their daughter like she was the only real thing left in his world. She stepped forward and placed her burned palm over his heart. "Then we face them together," she said. For the first time in months, the broken bond pulsed not with pain, but with something fiercer, purpose. They turned as one king, queen, child, and rogue, and faced the storm rolling down the mountain. Whatever came next, they would meet it side by side. Chapter 7. Fractured Alliances. The storm hit just as they crested the last ridge above. Not snow this time. Iron-gray clouds that spat sleet and wind sharp enough to flay skin. Rowan carried Lila on his shoulders, the child's small arms locked around his neck, her face buried against his hair to shield her from the gale. Lucius walked on Elara's left, one arm braced around her waist because the silver poisoning still dragged at his strength. Every step cost him. She felt it through the frayed bond like a tooth pulled slow. He never let go. By the time the village lanterns appeared tiny, defiant sparks in the darkness, Lucius was burning with fever. His skin felt furnace hot against the ice, veins black under the surface. Elara's own hands were raw and blistered, but she refused to let anyone else support him. They staggered through the gates like survivors of a shipwreck. The village square was already packed. Word had flown ahead on Wolfback. Torches hissed in the sleet. Faces turned toward them, some wary, some reverent, some openly hostile. An Omega Queen returning with the disgraced king at her side was a story no one had prepared for. Mara the baker pushed through first, took one look at Lucius swaying on his feet, and barked orders like a general. "Clear the longhouse, hot water, willow bark, moon mallow savna." Hands reached for Lila. Rowan snarled until he saw it was Bryn, the healer, then gently set the child down. Lila clung to Elara's leg for one terrified heartbeat before Mara scooped her up with a fierce, protective hug. Elara met the crowd's stares head-on. "He walked through silver wards to get our daughter back," she said, voice carrying over the wind. "Judge me if you must. Judge him later. Tonight he is poison-sick and still breathing because he refused to leave her." Silence, then slowly, people parted. They carried Lucius inside. The longhouse smelled of pine smoke and dried herbs. They laid him on a cot near the great hearth. Healers swarmed, cutting away his shirt, painting green salve over the blackened burns that spider-webbed across his chest. He bit back every sound, jaw clenched so hard she heard the crack of bone. Elara knelt beside him, threading her fingers through his sweat-damp hair, because it was the only place she was allowed to touch without hurting him worse. His eyes, fever-bright gold, found hers. "I kept my promise," he rasped. "You idiot," she whispered, tears falling onto his collarbone. "You almost died keeping it." A ghost of his old crooked smile. "Worth it." Rowan stood guard at the door, arms folded, daring anyone to object. No one did. Hours later, when the fever finally broke and Lucius slept a drugged, exhausted sleep, Elara stepped outside to breathe. The storm had quieted to a soft, steady snowfall. Lanterns glowed gold along the lanes. She found Leela curled on a bench by the hearth, asleep under 3 blankets, thumb in mouth the way she hadn't done since she was 2. Mara sat beside her, knitting needles clicking. "She asked for both of you," the baker said quietly. "Kept saying Mama and Papa saved me together." Elara's throat closed. Mara studied her for a long moment. "The village will follow you, whatever you choose. But you should know, some of the southern alphas have already sent ravens. They call Lucius weak for letting an Omega reject him. They call you a danger. War's coming, whether we invite it or not." Elara closed her eyes. The weight of it settled on her shoulders like wet wool. Inside, Lucius stirred, murmuring her name in his sleep, half plea, half prayer. She went back to him. He woke long enough to feel her slide onto the narrow cot beside him, careful of his wounds. She laid her head on the one unburned patch of his shoulder. He turned into her instinctively, nose pressing to her hair, breathing her in like air after drowning. "I'm here," she whispered against his skin. "Just for tonight. Just until you heal." His arm curved around her waist, trembling, reverent. "All I need is tonight," he answered, voice raw. "Every tonight you're willing to give me." Outside, the village settled into watchful quiet. Wolves prowled the perimeter. Children were tucked close to their mothers. The northern lights returned, faint and far off, as if the goddess herself stood guard. And for the first time since the festival square, Elara fell asleep with the steady thud of Lucius's heart beneath her cheek scarred. Repentant, but still beating for her. Morning would bring new battles. Selena's betrayal laid bare. Rival packs circling like vultures, the question of whether a broken bond could ever hold a kingdom together. But tonight, in a village that had chosen to shelter them both, a mother slept beside the man who had walked through fire for their child. And the snow kept falling, soft and merciless, covering every old footprint until the path forward was clean. Chapter 8. Temptations Unleashed. The snow kept falling for 3 more days, sealing Silver Hollow in a white hush. Inside the longhouse, Lucius healed slower than any alpha should. The silver had gone deep, threading black veins toward his heart. Healers worked in shifts, forcing bitter teas down his throat while he drifted in and out of fever dreams. Every time he surfaced, his hand groped blindly until it found Elara's. Only then did the tension leave his face. Elara never left his side for long. She slept, curled in the chair beside his cot, woke to change poultices, sang the old lullabies under her breath when the pain dragged him under again. Villagers brought stew she barely tasted. Leela crept in at dawn and dusk, climbing carefully onto the bed to lay her head on her father's good shoulder and whisper stories about snow rabbits and brave mamas. Lucius's fingers always found her curls, even unconscious. On the 4th morning, the fever broke for good. He opened his eyes clear and gold, looked straight at Elara, and said the first full sentence he'd managed in days. "I dreamed you forgave me." She had been wringing out a cloth, her hand stilled. "Dreams lie. They also tell the truth we're too afraid to speak when we're awake," he answered softly. She pressed the cool cloth to his forehead anyway, because it was easier than meeting his eyes. Outside, the village stirred with uneasy purpose. Ravens came and went from the south, black wings against white sky. Each carried the same message, worded differently. The southern alphas were gathering under one banner. Selena had vanished from the capital the night Lila was taken. Rumor said she carried a child again, Lucius's child, and that the boy with the white direwolf form now stood at her side, obedient and enormous. The north had become a refuge and a target in the same breath. Rowan called a council in the longhouse that evening. Lucius insisted on being there. He walked in under his own power, pale and bandaged, but upright. The room fell silent when he entered. Elara stood at the head of the table, not beside him, not yet, but close enough that their shadows overlapped on the wall. Rowan unrolled a map across the table. Red stones marked hostile packs, Black stones marked allies. There were far too many red. They want the king weakened, Rowan said flatly. They want the north broken before spring. And they want the queen silenced as a symbol. Lucius's hand settled on the table, knuckles white. They can try. One of the older Omegas, a woman named Hesper, with iron in her braid and fire in her eyes, spoke up. They're saying an alpha who kneels to an Omega is no alpha at all. They're saying fate itself has abandoned you. Lucius looked directly at Elara when he answered. Fate put her in my path. I'm the one who abandoned it, not the other way around. A ripple went through the room, shock, approval, fear. Elara felt every stare land on her like hot coals. She lifted her chin. I am not a symbol, she said. I am a mother who wants her daughter to grow up in a world where no one is forced to stay with someone who hurts them. If that makes me dangerous, so be it. Later, when the council broke and plans were laid, scouts, defenses, alliances with rogue packs, Lucius found her on the porch, watching the moon rise over the frozen lake. He moved carefully, still favoring his left side, and stopped one respectful pace away. I need to ask something I have no right to ask, he said quietly. She waited. Come back to the palace with me. Not as my queen, not yet, maybe not ever, as the leader the North needs. The Omegas follow you. The Betas listen when you speak. Half the Alphas are terrified of what you represent, and the other half want to stand behind it. If we face what's coming, we face it together. All of us. The cold air burned her lungs. And if I say no, he didn't flinch. Then I stay here and defend this valley with my last breath. The palace can burn for all I care. My kingdom is wherever you and Lila are. The words hung between them, luminous and lethal. Elara looked out at the moon's reflection shattered across the ice. She thought of Lila's laughter echoing through the longhouse earlier, the way Lucius had smiled at the sound like it was the first sunrise he'd seen in years. I will come, she said finally, for the people who have no voice, for the ones who watched me walk away that night and found the strength to walk away from their own cages. But understand this, Lucius Black. She turned to him then, eyes fierce and wet. Something raw and hopeful flared in his face, pain and gratitude braided so tightly they looked like the same thing. He dropped to one knee in the snow, not in submission this time, but in solemn oath. Then I will spend every day of my life making sure that if you ever choose to give it, your heart comes willingly, nothing less. The wind carried his words across the valley, soft and unbreakable. Far away in the south, Selena stood on a balcony of black stone, hand resting on the swell of her belly, watching the same moon. The white direwolf pup, no longer a pup, nearly as tall as her shoulder, pressed against her side, eyes glowing like fresh blood. Soon, she whispered to the night, soon they'll all see who the moon goddess truly chose. And high above, the northern lights flared, once violent, green shot through with crimson, as though the sky itself took sides. Chapter 9, Trials of the Heart. The journey south took 9 days through blizzards that tried to bury them alive. Elara rode at the head of the column, silver-gray cloak snapping in the wind, Lila bundled against her chest. Lucius rode 2 lengths behind, never closer, never farther, Black Warhorse steady under him, eyes fixed on her back like she was the only fixed star in a collapsing sky. Between them rode 30 northern wolves, Omegas with steel in their spines, Betas who had chosen loyalty over tradition, and Rohan, silent and lethal, at her right hand. Every mile south, the bond tugged harder, painful, hungry, alive. She felt him fighting at every heartbeat, felt the effort it cost him to keep the promised distance. Some nights she woke gasping from dreams of his voice begging in the mud, and found fresh snow trampled outside her tent where he had stood watch until dawn. They reached the capital, under a sky the color of old bruises. The palace gates opened without challenge. The guards dropped to their knees when they saw Elara, not Lucius. Word had spread like wildfire. The Omega Queen was returning, not as a penitent, but as the North's chosen voice. Banners of silver and crimson flew side by side now. Children threw moonflowers in her path. Old women wept openly. Lucius dismounted first and offered her his hand, not to help her down, but palm up, an offering. She took it. The crowd roared. Inside the great hall, the elders waited in a semicircle, faces carved from suspicion and fear. Selina was nowhere to be seen. The high elder, a woman named Calix with moon-white hair, stepped forward. "The moon goddess has sent a trial," she announced, voice ringing against stone. "The kingdom bleeds. The bond is broken. Only one thing can heal it, or destroy it forever." She lifted a silver circlet woven with nightshade and moonstone. "The trial of 3 nights. 1 night for truth, 1 for blood, 1 for choice. Both king and queen must enter the sacred circle beneath the full moon. If the goddess finds the bond worthy of mending, it will reform stronger, purified. If she finds it poisoned beyond saving, the one who broke it will pay with life." A hush fell so complete the torches sounded like screams. Lucius's face went stone still. "I will enter." Calix turned to Elara. "And you, Queen of the North?" Every eye in the hall pinned her. She felt the weight of every Omega who had ever been told her worth lay in submission. She thought of Lila asleep upstairs, safe for now. She thought of Lucius on his knees in the snow, promising to wait until mountains crumbled. "I will enter," she said. That night, the palace prepared. They bathed separately, her in moonwater and sage, him in cold iron and silence. They dressed in white color of surrender, color of beginnings. No crowns, no armor. Only the marks they carried on their skin. His mating bite scarred over on her shoulder. Her rejection claw marks still livid across his chest. At moonrise, they walked to the sacred circle. Beneath the palace, an ancient ring of standing stones sunk deep into the earth, open to the sky. The entire kingdom gathered on the hills around it, torches a ring of fire against the dark. They stepped inside together. The stones sealed behind them with a sound like breaking bone. First night, truth. The moon turned red. Memories rose like smoke. Elara saw every moment. Lucius had betrayed her, felt the exact second her heart cracked open, the night she found him with Selina. She heard her own voice begging him to choose her, choose them, and watched him turn away again and again. Lucius saw her pain from the inside, felt the slow death of trust. The nights she cried into pillows so Lila wouldn't hear. The way she still reached for him in sleep even after everything. They fell to their knees, retching truth like poison. When dawn came, neither had spoken a word. Only tears had fallen, his first, then hers, then both together until the ground between them bloomed dark. Second night, blood. The moon turned black. Pain came without mercy. Every wound they had ever given each other reopened. Her rejection claws split his chest anew. Blood pouring hot and real. The old mating bite on her shoulder tore wide. Silver fire racing through her veins. They screamed until voices gave out. Lucius crawled across the circle, dragging himself through his own blood to reach her. He pressed his forehead to hers, sharing the agony because he would not let her bear it alone. "I'm here," he rasped over and over. "I'm here. Take whatever you need from me, all of it." She clawed at his shoulders, half mad with pain, and felt him give every drop of strength, every heartbeat, anything to keep her breathing. When dawn bled across the sky again, they were curled together in the center of the circle, covered in blood, alive, inseparable. Third night, choice. The moon turned silver, pure, blinding, ancient. Silence fell so deep they heard each other's hearts. The goddess spoke not in words, but in feeling that poured through the broken bond like molten starlight. Elara saw 2 futures. One, she walked away again, free and whole, bonds severed forever. Lucius would die before the next moonrise, not by force, but by choice. He would lay his crown at Lila's feet and follow Elara into exile or death, whichever she deemed just. 2. She chose to stay, not for duty, not for fate, but because the man bleeding beside her had finally become someone she could love without losing herself. The weight of it crushed her lungs. Lucius lifted his head. Blood crusted his lashes. His voice was barely a whisper. "Whatever you choose, I accept. I chose wrong once. I will not take your choice from you now, even if it kills me." Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from pain this time, but from the terrifying, luminous truth blooming inside her chest. She looked at the man who had broken her world and then spent every day since trying to rebuild it with his bare, bleeding hands. She reached for the torn edges of the bond, jagged, scarred, raw, and pulled, not to mend it perfectly, not to go backward, but to weave something new. Light exploded from the circle, white and fierce and alive. The stones trembled. The watching kingdom fell to its knees as one. When the glow faded, the bond was still there, changed, flexible, stronger in its broken places. The mating mark on her shoulder glowed soft silver, no longer a brand but a promise kept. Elara looked at Lucius. He was crying openly now, great shuddering breaths like a man pulled from drowning. She cupped his face with shaking hands. "I choose you," she said, voice steady, firm and sure. "Not the king, not the alpha. You, the man who walked through fire and waited on the right side of my line." He pressed his forehead to hers, unable to speak. Above them, the moon blazed full and approving, and in the shadows beyond the stones, unseen by all, a white direwolf pup turned and vanished into the night, red eyes glowing with fury. The trial was over. The war had only begun. Chapter 10. The circle of stones released them at dawn. They walked out hand in hand, blood-streaked, barefoot, white robes clinging like second skins. The kingdom knelt in a wave that began at the front and rolled all the way to the city walls. No one cheered. They simply lowered their heads, as though the moon goddess herself had stepped among them. Elara felt the new bond settle inside her chest. No longer a chain, no longer a wound, but a living thread of silver and fire. It hummed with Lucius's heartbeat, steady and humbled, and fiercely protective. When he squeezed her fingers, she squeezed back without thinking. Lila waited at the palace steps, eyes huge, clutching Mara's hand. The moment she saw them, she tore free and ran. Lucius dropped to his knees in the frost and caught her mid-lip, burying his face in her curls while she sobbed "Papa" over and over. Elara knelt too, wrapping arms around them both until the three of them were a trembling knot of tears and relief. Rowan stood watch a few paces away, arms folded, mouth set in a hard line. When Elara met his eyes, he gave one slow nod, respect, warning, and farewell, all in one. Later, when the palace finally quieted, the war council began. Selena had not been idle. In the weeks they were sealed inside the circle, she had vanished south with the white direwolf boy, now called Kale, Lucius's hidden son, and a growing host of disaffected alphas. They had taken 3 border keeps by force. They flew a new banner, Blackfield Crimson Moon, eclipsed. Their message was simple and brutal. The age of fated mates was over. Power belonged to those strong enough to seize it. An Omega Queen who forced a king to kneel had no place on any throne. Lucius stood before the war map, still pale from blood loss, and spoke the words no one wanted to hear. "She has my son, my true-born son, hidden and twisted into a weapon." His voice cracked. "I will not let him become what she wants." Elara laid her hand on the table beside his. "Then we take him back. And we end this before more children grow up believing love is weakness." They planned through the night, defenses, alliances, supply lines. Every time Lucius's hand brushed hers, the bond flared warm and steady, a reminder that they were no longer fighting alone. At dawn, riders brought worse news. Selena's army was marching north faster than any wolf should move. Scouts reported unnatural shadows traveling with them, things that moved wrong, that left no prints, whispers of blood magic. Lucius ordered the evacuation of every village along the southern road. Elara sent ravens north, calling every Omega who had ever sat at her hearth. Every rogue who believed a pack could be built on choice instead of chains. They came. Hundreds. Wolves who had lived in terror of rejection now rode beneath silver and crimson banners, eyes fierce with purpose. On the eve of the new moon, the night before the armies would meet, Elara found Lucius on the highest balcony overlooking the city. Snow had started again, soft and relentless. He didn't turn when she stepped beside him. "I used to stand here and think the kingdom was mine to command," he said quietly. "Now I know the only thing I ever truly ruled was my own arrogance." She slipped her hand into his. "We rule nothing alone anymore." He looked at her then, eyes raw. "If tomorrow goes wrong, it won't. If it does," he pressed, "promise me you'll take Leela and run. The North will shelter you. Rohan will." She silenced him with a finger to his lips. "I walked away once," she said. "I will never walk away again. We finish this together, or we don't finish it at all." For a long moment, he simply stared, as though memorizing the shape of her defiance. Then he pulled her against him, careful, reverent, and rested his forehead against hers. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "No," she answered, soft but unflinching. "But you're learning how to earn me every single day. And that's enough." Far below, the city lights glowed like a promise. Above them, the sky was clear and mercilessly bright with stars. And on the southern horizon, a crimson glow rose unnatural, hungry. Selena was coming. The final battle would be fought beneath the next full moon. Mother against betrayer. Father against son. Old world against the one they were bleeding to build. Elara closed her eyes and felt the bond sing between them, scarred, remade, unbreakable. Whatever storm came, they would meet it side by side. Chapter 11. The Final Howl. The full moon rose blood-red over the Vale of Ashes. Two armies faced each other across a frozen river. One banner silver and crimson, the other black eclipsed by crimson. Between them the wind screamed like a dying thing. Elara stood at the front line, cloaked in white wolf pelt, hair braided tight for battle. Lucius stood at her right, black armor scarred from old wars and new promises. Lila was safe behind stone walls 100 miles north, guarded by Rowan and every Omega who had ever found courage at Elar's hearth. That knowledge was the only thing keeping Elar's heart from shattering. Across the ice, Selena waited on a ridge of black stone. Beside her towered Kale, no longer a boy, but a monstrous white direwolf, eyes glowing the same crimson as the moon. Chains of blood runes circled his neck. He did not move unless Selena's hand twitched. Lucius's voice carried over the wind, raw and commanding. "Selena, release the boy. This ends today." Selena smiled, slow and poisonous. "It ends when the old ways lie broken at my feet. You taught me power answers to no one, Lucius. I simply learned the lesson better." Elara stepped forward. The bond flared hot and steady between her and Lucius' anchor. "Weapon, vow." "Kale," she called, voice clear enough to cut steel. "Your father walked through silver fire for one child. He will do it again for you. Your mother chose venom. You still have a choice." The great white wolf's ears flicked. For a heartbeat, the crimson in his eyes flickered gold. Selena's hand tightened on the rune chain. Dark fire lashed out, searing Kale's flank. He whimpered a lost child's sound inside a monster's throat. Lucius snarled, half-shifting, claws bursting free. Enough. The battle began with a howl that split the sky. Wolves poured across the ice, silver and black and gray and white, clashing in a storm of teeth and fury. Elara fought like something born of moonlight and vengeance. Smaller than most, but faster, precise, every strike for the future she refused to let die. Lucius carved a path straight toward the ridge, a black tempest of rage and redemption. They met Selena together. She shifted as they reached her sleek, lethal eyes, mad with triumph. Blood magic swirled around her like living smoke. "You should have stayed broken," she spat at Elara. "Omegas were never meant to rule." Elara's answer was a blade of pure moonlight, the new bond igniting in her hands, silver fire given form. "We were never meant to kneel." The three of them collided, claws raked, magic burned. Selena fought dirty shadows, coiling around Lucius's throat. Venomous strikes aimed at Elara's belly, where a second child might one day grow. But they fought as one creature with two hearts. Every time Selena struck Lucius, Elara felt it and countered twice as hard. Every time she bled, Lucius roared and became unstoppable. Kale watched, trembling, chains smoking against his fur. In the chaos, Elara locked eyes with him again. "You are not her weapon," she shouted over the storm. "You are his son." The rune chain snapped, not from force, from choice. Kale lunged not at them, but at Selena. Massive jaws closed around the arm, wielding the blood magic whip. She screamed as darkness turned on its mistress. The shadows recoiled, devouring her power from the inside. Lucius caught Elara as the ridge buckled, shielding her with his body while stone rained down. When the dust settled, Selena lay broken at the bottom of the crevasse, chest still, eyes staring sightlessly at the red moon. Kale shifted back to a terrified 10-year-old boy, pale and shaking, stood over her body. Tears carved clean tracks through the blood on his face. Lucius dropped to his knees and opened his arms. The boy ran into them without hesitation. Elara joined them, wrapping them both close. The bond sang, whole, fierce, complete. Around them, the battle ended as suddenly as it began. Selena's army, leaderless, magic shattered, threw down weapons and bowed to the moon that now shone pure silver again. Later hours, days, a lifetime later, they stood on the palace balcony once more. The kingdom stretched beneath them, scarred, healing, alive. Kale slept inside, curled between Lila and two wolf pup plush toys, finally safe. The banners of eclipsed crimson had been burned. In their place flew a new standard, silver moon embraced by crimson, never eclipsed, only held. Lucius turned to Elara, eyes soft with everything he still struggled to believe he deserved. "I was a king without a kingdom," he said quietly. "You gave me one worth ruling." She took his hand and placed it over her heart, then laid hers over his. "We built it together," she answered. "And we'll keep building it every day we wake up and choose each other again." He leaned his forehead against hers, breath trembling. She silenced him the only way left. With a kiss that tasted of snow and smoke and second chances, gentle, reverent, unbreakable. Far in the north, Rowan watched the palace lights from a distant ridge, raised a cup of honey wine to the wind, and smiled for the first time in years. The storm had passed. The wolves had learned a new way to howl. And somewhere beyond the stars, the moon goddess smiled, fierce, tender, and proud. The final howl has sounded, but the pack is still growling for more. If please don't do this, ripped your heart out, rebuilt it stronger, and left you screaming, "I needed this today," into the void, then don't let the story end here. Smash that follow button so you never miss the next tear-soaked, soul-shaking werewolf romance. Drop A in the comments if Elara choosing herself even when it hurt like hell hit you right in the feels. Share this with the friend who swears she's done with alcohols, because this one just might change her mind. And if you're still crying over a fictional king on his knees in the mud, same bestie, same. The moon is full. The pack is waiting. Come howl with us.